Hey everyone, welcome back to Engagement Academy. This is the show that teaches you how to drive engagement by showing you things that you might not realize are getting in the way of your people doing their best work, because it's brought to you by a disengaged employee. And I think I've said this in a few other episodes, but I've never been so engaged to talk about disengagement. I found my spark. And this is a super exciting episode because I'm announcing that I've launched my Community Engagement Academy, which has been a dream of mine for maybe 3 years now. And I wanted to tell you all about it because I want you to join. Although, if you love this show, you got to get in there. This is a great spot for you to learn, is the show. But the community is where you have access to me and all the guests that have been on the show and so many other people in HR who are asking the right questions and having discussions every day about what it's going to take to drive engagement at their company. So yeah, I want you to join, but I want to just tell you about it and how we even got here, because it's a huge part of the story and the missing piece of why working in HR is so hard. So we'll get to the community in a minute, but for the past 5 years now, I've been podcasting. I got so lucky. I don't know if I even consciously did it, but I was working for an HR tech company and it was the pandemic. My job was product marketing and I was talking to customers every day to help our product team deliver a better tool at the time, which was Pingboard. And I took that part of my job very seriously. I need to do that part well in order to be good at product marketing at all, because a product marketer at a company is the person who enables all the other teams. They help the marketing team understand who they're selling to. They help the sales team close more deals and teach them how to explain the tool or whatever they're selling to the viewpoint that the person even cares about. They help the product team inform the roadmap to figure out what filters to build next based on conversations they've been having. They help the customer success and support team to round out the help documentation and the ways and the reasons to upgrade to get more use out of the tool to solve more problems for the persona that's being sold to. That job to me was really one of the high points of my career because I love to be needed and I love to help. And at Pingboard, I loved serving all of those teams to give them everything they needed to have better conversations with you all, the HR persona. But what actually happened was I poured myself so much into those conversations with all of you in the early days because I enjoyed them so much. I've talked to customers of all different industries and still enjoyed connecting with people. I like to talk to people. I like to get to know people. I like to hear their story. I like to give someone an audience because I feel like everyone deserves to tell their story. I had done this in different industries for different types of personas, but the HR world, all of you, those conversations were next level. The more I heard about a day in your life, the more I heard how short-staffed and how little to no budget you had and how much you agonized over making sure your people were okay, how much you cared about them. You knew something was off with your culture. You didn't know exactly what. You were trying different things. You were trying to send surveys. I gave you my perspective on what makes employees take them. Mostly, though, we were just bonding over shared experiences of feeling like you're being ripped to shreds with all the areas you're needed, but you feel like you can't make great impact. And that resonated with me because that's what it felt like. Basically, my whole career was like too many meetings, not enough budget, high expectations, go, just zoo without zookeepers. That's what the workplace experience was for me too. So I needed to understand a day in your life so that we could build a better product, but that part came naturally. Like I didn't care so much about mining for those answers. What we were doing was I was having these incredible discussions with all of you like, hey, you're not crazy. That sounds really hard. I don't work in HR, but I didn't know that it was like that, and I can't imagine. On top of it, you're expected to own payroll, compliance, policies, benefits, hiring, firing, employee growth, like any kind of conflict management that pops up. You're interrupted so much and you context switch so much more than I did in any of my roles. And in marketing, we have to do that a lot too. But I was just blown away by all of you. All of you, you're very different people, but you're not. Because more than 500 conversations I've had at this point, there's always a common two denominators. You are all incredible problem solvers. Like you tell me about the integrations you're doing and the process you set up and in between talking to me, you like somehow also put someone on a PIP. I'm like, what are you doing? Like you're master multitaskers. This is crazy. But you also had the gift of empathy and you cared a lot, a ton of soft skills, a ton of heart, a ton of human emotion for your workforce. And I loved that about you because it's not what my experience had been exactly with HR leaders I'd come across, but it was because I didn't understand them. They were busy and they were there and they were always smiling, but the company culture wasn't the best. And it was through those conversations with all of you that I kind of could understand why. So any toxic workplace I had given my time and energy to, it was kind of like all was forgiven through all of those conversations because I finally got it from the disengaged camp, which was me, disengaged doesn't mean you don't want to care. I had been disengaged many times in my career where I was a high performer, but I was blocked by lots of inefficiencies to the day and disruptions in people and just a lackluster culture that didn't lend itself to me doing my best work. I finally saw from my disengaged standpoint why it's so hard for HR to create a great culture. So the pandemic happened, and like anyone with a brain, I thought, let me start a podcast. Duh. It was kind of a tough sell at first. It ended up being one of our best branding moves for the sake of Pingboard long term. But at first, it was interesting to convince my manager at the time, like, hey, trust me, I know I don't have HR experience, but there's a great perspective here because everything that they're saying they're struggling with, I have thoughts on how to do it better, how to manage it better, to get employees to take action. Because I had been the manager, I had been the executive, I had been the person onboarding into a company, I had been the person who didn't know how to log into stuff and was lost in the all hands and was just trying to my best to figure out which way was up. I had tips there. So fast forward, I kind of had to fight tooth and nail and finally go to leadership like our CEO and say, hey, I know I don't report to you, but I want to do this. And he was like, okay. Oh, okay. So let's go. That was my first show, Flip Flops and People Ops. And that was 5 years ago. I was a different person back then. I have leveled up since, in my opinion. But I love that version of myself because I was just trying to lead with love. That was such a passion project. I just wanted to get all of your story out there to say, hey, all of you who think it's just you think you're crazy and you think you're bad at your job. You're not. Because I talked to lots of you who say the same thing. And this show is meant to help you all see that like you're not doing this in isolation. There's a lot of other HR people out there who are trying to figure this out just the same as you. It's the same story with the different names and characters at every company and different faces. That show was really just a labor of love from me to anyone in HR to hear like employees don't hate you. In fact, for the first time, I think we get you. I worked on that show on the side somehow of also doing like feature launches, writing email campaigns, and doing a lot of other work. So it became tough to manage. But the show was getting downloads and people were starting to reach out to me and say, Christie, I love your show. And I'm like, you do? You're listening? Great. Okay, hi. Those first early years, I was like, I love this. I didn't think it was going to become a thing, but it started to grow and gain momentum. And I got more and more listeners and messages from all of you. And in those early days, I met with all of you. Like, you listen to the show? When can you talk? I don't care if you're not a Pingboard customer. I want you to be a Pingboard customer. I want to talk and understand a day in your life against all these other conversations I've had. So what happened next was podcasting. I got so lucky that it became my full-time job. I was given permission to be this face of the company and a spokesperson in a way to just focus on the show full time. And that's when I started doing webinars and teaching you all the ways to get employees to take your surveys, why we don't take your surveys, how to carve out enough time for yourself to go through the data when you get it back. And I colored outside the lines a lot to say things like, you have to set aside time to go through the data. And if anyone at your company tries to tell you you're not allowed to do that, that's like not meeting your basic needs. You need that time to yourself. It's okay to say, I'm not available. And I had to toe the line between I'm representing an HR tech company and like, I want to just show up for you as a human. And did you know you're allowed to take a break? And there were times where the brand was like, hey, let's like veer it back to like the basics. And I would do my best to try to say a little bit more than what needed to every time, because I was just really enjoying giving you all a place to feel human and to feel seen. Fast forward a couple more years, the show really took off. And at the very end, we were doing an episode a week. It became something that I couldn't have imagined for the sake of like Slack channels and Pingboard were saying, how did you hear about us? Christie's podcast, Christie's webinar. I'm like, what is going on? This is crazy. It's the perfect example of if you follow something that's your passion, your life unfolds in a more authentic way, 100%. That's what happened to me. And I'm very grateful to Pingboard for letting me talk into a microphone for like 3.5, 4 years. For what it's worth, it's a lot harder than it sounds. I'm lucky to have a ton of support from a different manager who was making sure that I had the creative space to do all of that. And I'm just like forever grateful that they let me do that in my career. So Flip Flops and People Ops, that show, that was like so much fun, such a joy, a ton of work. But like, if it doesn't feel like work, then to me, it was like just the right thing to do. Pingboard got acquired, and we'll skip a couple chapters, but I decided I wasn't going to be able to do the show my way anymore, and it was becoming a little blurrier what it was for. And so I respectfully ended my relationship with the new company and gave them the show. They were like, "Are you going to take it with you?" I said, "No, I'll start a new show." And it was almost like I wanted to wrap a bow on that and just set that aside. Like that was that. And now we have Engagement Academy because I decided to take my biggest bet on myself in this life, which meant choosing all of you over representing a brand specifically, like full time. I just wanted to do more storytelling with you all. And I could tell time and time again that you all were so underserved with good HR content because I'm just sitting over here telling you what gets employees to take your surveys because it's true. It's my lived experience. And then all of you are like, "This is the best webinar I've ever been on." I'm like, "It is." Well, there's more where that came from. And it just became so clear that there was no training on how to drive engagement. And that time I spent as a product marketer was heavily in research and looking at Gallup best practices, looking at Josh Burson's content, which by the way, he doesn't have HR experience either. I was looking at the best of what's in HR brew and everything in between, like searching for thought leaders on who's the best about setting goals, who can come on the show, who can talk about employee growth, who can talk about things as deep as compensation planning, because I don't know anything about that, but I can bring someone on the show to add some color to what I'm talking about from the employee experience. It just became clear to me that there were no trainings out there that included what I was talking about in my perspective, plus the guests I was bringing on. And all of you were just like, "This is great content. Please make more." So again, to go backwards, to go forwards, I couldn't do the show the way that I wanted to anymore. And that just is. The sooner you can make peace with the way something isn't going to happen, the sooner you can pick up where you left off. And so I was just like, "Okay, that's fine. Here you go. You keep it. I'm over here now." So Engagement Academy is basically my next iteration of all of that work done on Flip Flops and People Ops. We are building on those conversations and we are starting again, explaining engagement from beginning to end and everything in between because the topic is big and there are many factors that influence it. And you don't have time to figure out in what order things have to happen or things you should think through and do all the research because I've basically already done it for you as one giant trauma response to what my career was, which was a lot of burnout, a lot of disappointment in myself, in other leaders, and just experiences that I thought were going to be bigger and grander than they were. And it's okay. So all of that research I'd done, all the conversations and all the experts I had on my other show, I spent some time, several months actually, this last winter and into spring. And I just whiteboarded and walked around my neighborhood like a crazy woman when I didn't have my kids. I talked to myself. I called all my mentors. I called all my friends. I called anyone who cared about anything I've ever worked on. And I said, "I have this idea. It's kind of crazy." In fact, I remember pacing my master bedroom closet talking to Christie Williams, the person who's been on my show the most, like 5 times on Flip Flops and People Ops. I said, "Christie, there's a lot of HR communities out there. There's a lot of HR content out there. I don't think any of it holistically addresses the root of the problem that's causing everyone to be so upset and panicked and like anxiety ridden in these HR roles. No one's taught how to think for themselves when shit hits the fan. And you don't have time to go watch a webinar, assuming it's even remotely decent, which it never is, and that it's going to have the solutions to your problems. And it's why HR buys random tech, because there's like just a missing explanation, like a missing lesson for basically workplace psychology. Because driving engagement is a very emotional, human, psychologically, foundationally based thing to do on top of everything HR is asked to do. Anyway, I'm talking to Christie Williams in my closet, pacing a hole in the carpet, like, "Christie, this doesn't exist, does it?" And she's like, "No, it doesn't. Are you going to go make it?" And I was like, I have to quit everything and do this. This is it. I vetted everything against so many other experts and they were like, "Yeah, there's nothing like this out there." So again, I was just taking many, many weeks, many months, talking to myself, making notes, outlining, frameworking, blending every book I've read, every therapy session I've personally had just as a human. Like, what skills have I learned to overcome obstacles? What is the rinse repeat framework to drive engagement? Because this can't just be an art at every company, so much so that there's no formula to follow. I refused for that to be the case. So I spent so much time with it that I came up with the AC framework. And in my community, I teach you this. Once I teach you the mechanics of how driving engagement literally works, I teach you AC, which is getting in alignment with everyone at the company. And there's many things in between there. That means that. We're simplifying. That's why it's an acronym. So alignment, surveying everyone, getting the data, influencing decision-making, and executing in a way that gets everyone excited and bought into what you're doing because they feel a part of it. Simple enough, right? It's not, because you have different stakeholders at your company. I've come up with this framework against making sure you understand the perspectives of your different stakeholders, which is your regular employees, your managers, your executives, and you, maybe even your board, if you're depending on what kind of an organization you're in, or your frontline employees. There's skip levels to this, and everyone cares about different stuff, but they all want the same thing. And their problems are actually the solutions to each other's this one giant thing that we're all trying to solve for is to make everyone feel connected. So in my community, I've created this framework and I'm building this course lesson by lesson. I'm teaching you literally what is engagement, how to think about it, and then teaching you what needs to be in order, how to talk about it, how to get everyone on the same page as you, how to get people excited, what and when to do certain strategies and tactics for you. And the lessons go really deep. They'll have scripts. Like, you need budget to do a lot of this. You need budget in HR. You can't drive engagement without it. We've talked about this. Your company values need to be in order. There's no framework for everyone to treat each other. It's going to be a zoo without zookeepers every time. We've talked about this. I've come up with templates and scripts and frameworks and like examples from other companies. And I've pulled it all together from my old show. And as I'm building the courses, I'm creating content for you so that you're always equipped, no matter if you need to have a difficult discussion with an executive or get permission to send surveys, which is crazy. All of you should have permission to send surveys. It's like usually the executive is in some kind of fear state where they don't ask, don't tell. We're driving revenue. It's like, it doesn't work that way, buckaroo. People quit, or worse, they quiet quit and they stay and they run our business into the ground. I talk about all that stuff and I teach you how to hold your ground respectfully, how to position everything you're asking for as a solution to everyone's problems. So here's just a little taste. We talked about this last week in the last episode, is like, when you announce a survey, you don't just tell everyone to take a survey. To employees, you say, I'm here to deliver you a better employee experience. I can't do that unless you tell me what you don't like about working here. I can't wait to get your feedback so that I can make it easier for you to do your best work. Like giving employees permission to give you negative feedback, helping you keep your head when you get it to remember it's not personal. Most of them are talking about their managers. 70% of what drives engagement is out of your hands. It's the manager relationship. Then to managers, you're like, hey, you want a more productive team? You want a team that like gets along sort of and like actually cares deeply about the work so that you can go faster, so you can hit your goals? We need you to help remind your employees to take this survey. We need you to take this survey. You start to talk about things in terms that everyone cares about. Hey, executives, you don't want me to send a survey? Okay, well, on the other side of this revenue problem you're trying so hard to solve, the answers are with our employees because those are the revenue drivers. We must send a survey so that we can understand what's holding us back from revenue. The negative employee feedback is the answers to the revenue and disengagement test, okay? There's a ton of HR communities out there. There's plenty of webinars and things you can join and try. And it's just that what I've found is nothing out there is very helpful. Definitely nothing that's free. And I love my People Slack channel. I've met a lot of great people in there, but there was a time where I was posting about how experience drives engagement, because that's a concept that's really important to understand. And I got a message that said from an admin like, hey, this is the employee experience channel, so we deleted your post. And I said, oh, did you read it though? It said how experience drives engagement. And they said, yeah, it's just for experience. And I was like, oh, I'm in the wrong place. I'm like so ahead of the time that this is so early that people don't get it. And that's okay. But I have to go build my own place for people to come who are seeking answers. I also find that the advice in free communities, like, it's very hit or miss. Sometimes people tell you what works for them and they have a different industry and a different size team. And it's not always helpful for HR to give HR advice in a vacuum, because what worked for someone doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. There's a lot of other factors to consider. Someone else's Cinderella story might cause you to have even more imposter syndrome. I also have sat through so many HR webinars that were not mine. I've read through ebooks that were not mine and blog posts that were not mine. And I'm like, what is this actually saying? And they're very good at saying buzzwords like you need to optimize your employee experience, but they don't tell you how. You need to get buy-in from employees, but they don't tell you how. You need to make sure you have a smooth rollout, but they don't tell you what that looks like or how to get started or how to think about it or what to do if that isn't happening. And to make sure you get the data and make data-driven decisions. But like what decisions and how do we get that data? I got tired of hearing all of you say, I don't know what's wrong with my people. And I'm like, yeah, it's no wonder. The content out there doesn't seem like it knows either. So this community is meant to heal the HR leader, you. Whether you're a generalist or you're a VP, you are a leader. You chose the path of empathy. You chose this harder path. You're not always taken seriously. You're not given resources. We're going to work on that, like ASAP. But you deserve better because SHRM didn't really teach you this. None of the HR training certification platforms are going to teach you what I'm going to teach you in my community because I built it myself, because nothing like it was out there. Hopefully I've made that part clear. Like it just needed to happen because you all were so underserved, not only with better content, but with like the ability to have some fun and let your hair down. My favorite compliment on the show is like, Christie, you're teaching me so much, but you're also just really fun to listen to. And I binged a bunch of episodes going to drive to my sister's house and to pick up my dog. And like, then she got in the car and we kept listening and she doesn't know anything about HR and she listened too. This isn't a me thing. This is I'm getting so much value from this by bringing you the show because it's helping heal my past. And I love to hear that you're getting value and finally getting answers and thinking more clearly every day about what it means to drive engagement. And you're forgiving yourself for being so hard on yourself and for allowing people to not give you resources and to not take you seriously because you weren't equipped until now. This community is, I'm not going to say it's my life's work. My children are my life's work. My goodness, we can talk about them any day. I love setting my kids up for the most success and giving them tools to make sure that they always have the right people surrounded in their life. I always want to make sure my kids are equipped to be leaders. We say things in our house like leadership is kind. The only way out is through. We have all these things that I'm trying to teach them young. But aside from raising my kids into being lovely, perfectly capable adults, my whole career that I thought was disappointment after disappointment was actually me training to get all this experience and intel to help you understand outside of your HR bubble that sometimes you have no choice to be in because you're HR. You're privy to other information. There's always going to be an invisible wall a little bit because that's just the nature of your role. It is my duty to make sure you can see what life is like on the other side and why we're disengaged and what it takes to get us engaged because it's true. So I'll put a link to the community in the show notes. If you're not ready, it's okay. That's why I bring you this show. I will always give you free value and give you quick, easy tips, tricks, and tactics, basic stuff on this show that will definitely help you level up your career. But if you really want to get to the root of what's holding you back, the community puts everything in order and gives you access to other people just like you so that you can talk. And you can talk to me because we hold things like regular office hours during the week. We have weekend office hours if you're in a state of eternal chaos, because I know what that life is like. Sometimes you can't meet during the week. I'll make myself available to make sure you feel supported and have someone to talk to at least once a month on the weekend. We're also going to offer breath work because the most transformative part of my healing journey of quitting my career in tech to do this instead to help heal the tech world and really not even tech, just like the workplace in general. A lot of therapy and personal growth and like ultimately breath work helped me process a lot of what happened to me, a lot of grief, a lot of emotions that I couldn't stuff down anymore because they were coming out in every direction and at the wrong people. So I'm really proud to offer you something different. Even if you're in the community, if you're not ready for it, it's okay. You will be one day. You'll get it one day soon. We are going to process some of the trauma of what it's been like to work in HR, because if you don't go get that version of yourself, they will continue to show up to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you suck at your job. Hey, no one's going to take that survey because it's stupid. We need to go heal that part. And then just better set you up for success so people 100% take your surveys. And then eventually this will lead to in-person events where we can then do version 3, like the next iteration of all of this, where we get together for real in real life and do all of our workshopping and have our favorite thought leaders come and our favorite experts and mentors from the community, and you all can meet each other in person, because it takes a village to drive engagement, and you're all doing it isolated, and you can do so much more when we are like working together and talking it out, taking the course, talking about even why what's in the course is working or not working so I can tweak it and make it even better. This is your place to learn for the first time ever how driving engagement works, meet all these new great HR connections, and give yourself what you deserve this whole time, which is to step into your power and to realize your empathy is a superpower. Paired with your love for problem solving, just your love for people, you are the secret weapon to the executive team. They just don't realize it yet. So just keep going, okay? It's been a long, tough road for me too, just to get here. It's kind of adorable. I look back and I'm like, whoa, look at all the carnage. But then I'm like, actually, look at all the really great moments too, though. And it was a big peak in my career has been connecting with all of you. And every single time I get a message from one of you, every single time I have a conversation, you always make my day better. And I am so excited to get all those conversations happening in one place, because we all need to be having them as a collective HR whole. So check out the community. I can't wait to see you in there. And until then, I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.